On my first day at work, the chief sent me undercover to bust a prostitution ring, but I ended up setting my sights on the boss's wife. I immediately ordered 100 Emperor packages, and the blonde punk thought I was there to cause trouble. The boss's wife got excited, thinking I was a wealthy client, and came downstairs to serve me herself. Afterward, I tipped off the chief and said, "Chief, the evidence is solid. Come in and arrest them." She only realized what happened when she was in the holding cell. That bastard is a cop, and he just pulled a free ride. I transmigrated into a parallel world and became a police officer. On my first day, before I even had time to put on my uniform, Chief Zhang Guangming called me into his office. He said, "Shaolin, I have an important mission for you." When I asked what it was, he replied, "Go undercover and bust a prostitution operation." I was stunned. The chief explained, "We received a tip that someone at Caesar Entertainment Center is engaging in illegal transactions. Because I'm a new face, it's less likely to alert the target." I figured out he was worried about offending someone. After all, running such a big venue downtown means they probably have connections. If we made a big fuss and came up empty-handed, it wouldn't look good. All right, if you refuse your boss on the first day of work, how can you survive? Besides, it's just busting a prostitution deal. It's not like we'll run into drug dealers. I followed the GPS to Caesar Entertainment Center. Damn, it was built like a palace. The crystal chandelier in the lobby was bigger than the police station yard. A bleach-haired pimp came over with a cigarette in his mouth. "What do you want?" "Alvanche. Big head or small head? What do you think?" He looked me up and down and chuckled. "Small head is more expensive." I kept a straight face. Good skills, price is no issue. Just as I said that, the sound of high heels came from the stairs. A woman in a cheongsam came down. She was tall and slender with an incredible aura. On her thigh was a tattoo of a cherry blossom. In my head, a buzz went off. Cherry blossom tattoo, that was the code name for the big drug trafficking case that had been making headlines recently. Cherry blossom drug case. I pointed at her and said to the pimp, "Her." He scoffed. "Dream on. That's our boss's woman." Boss's woman? In a place like this, no one walks away clean. "How much is your most expensive package?" "Imperial package, $99.99. I'll take 10 of them." The pimp swallowed hard, his eyes wide. "If that's not enough, I can add more." I spoke very casually since I had the green light to talk big without actually having to pay. Yellow Hair got pissed. "You here to cause trouble? If it's 100 sets, can you pay up?" "Play nice, this is Brother Long's turf." Brother Long, another name I extracted. I snapped my fingers. "Deal. 100 sets." Just then, the woman came back down the stairs. "I'll take this order." She was called Zhaoya. $1 million was enough to catch her interest. Yellow Hair was dumbfounded and said into his walkie-talkie, "One VIP guest prepare a room." Zhaoya generously offered, "Use my room." I immediately declined. "A regular room is fine." When we got to the private room on the 3rd floor, Zhaoya had changed into a short skirt and black stockings. The cherry blossom tattoo was clearly visible. She asked me, "Handsome first time?" I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, "Why do you have a tattoo?" She stretched her leg out in front of me. "Don't you like it?" "No, I don't like it either." She closed her eyes, waiting to earn that $1 million. "Just lie down." Half an hour later, I remembered why I was there. My phone had a dozen missed calls. I quickly called back. "Chief, come on in." I hung up. Zhaoya was staring at me blankly as sirens grew louder from afar, the whole building erupting into chaos. Someone outside was pounding on the door, yelling, "Sister-in-law, the cops are here, run." Zhaoya's face turned pale as she threw on her clothes and made a dash for it. The door was kicked open, and she was flung to the ground. I slowly got dressed. The woman glared at me viciously. "Just wait." After everyone was taken to the police station, I mingled among the Johns, waiting for the chief to come bail me out. The blonde spotted me and shouted, "He's a John too. Why are you arresting him?" The officer barked, "He's one of ours. How else would we gather evidence without misleading you?" The blonde blurted out, "He slept with our big sister." The interrogation room went silent for a second, then erupted in laughter. When Zhaoya was brought in, her eyes were practically spitting fire. I directly stopped my colleague who was about to let her go. "She stays. I want to interrogate her." Chief Zhang Guangming's look at me changed completely. In the interrogation room, I asked the blonde, Feng Jun, "How long have you been working at Caesar?" "Since it opened." "How much a month?" 29,800. 30 grand is pretty good in Luching. How'd you end up like this?" He drooped his head, lost it all gambling. Where did you gamble? Feng Jun hesitated for a moment. Brother Long took us there. There's a private club south of the city. On the surface, it's entertainment, but it's actually a casino. Sometimes Brother Long would lose over 3 million in one night. Without batting an eye, I casually asked, where did he get so much money? He seemed to be in some kind of partnership, making 7 or 8 million at a time. Outside the interrogation room, Director Zhang, who was listening through the one-way glass, had trembling hands. Making 7 or 8 million at a time, what kind of underworld business could rake in that much? There was only one answer: drugs. Director Zhang immediately called Chief Qian Feng of the City Bureau. Qian Feng and the City Bureau leadership sped all the way to Yushan Town Police Station. They stood outside the interrogation room, listening as I continued my questioning. When Zhao was brought in, she still glared at me fiercely. Who are you trying to scare? At worst, I'll be detained, and you won't get away either. Old Lao slammed the table and shouted, don't you have any idea what your man did? If you don't confess today, you'll never get out of here. Her face went pale. I uncuffed her and softened my tone. This case is bigger than you think. If you come clean now, we'll treat it like a spa day and let you go. She couldn't hold it together anymore. His name was Li Biao, known on the streets as Brother Long. He had a big shot who ran a zoo, specializing in transporting animals for people. Once, I overheard him on the phone saying they were shipping some cherry blossoms and needed to raise the freight by over 1 million. At the time, I wondered what kind of flower could be that valuable. The interrogation room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Outside, Director Qian clenched his fists and growled, arrest them. That very night, the Gusa Drug Enforcement Detachment, together with the anti-drug units from various precincts, swooped down on the outskirts of Shanghai and found the drug-making factory in a zoo. They seized 358 kilograms of new type drugs, 2 tons of precursor chemicals, over 70 guns of various types, and arrested 27 drug traffickers. The case shook the entire Jiangnan police force. The Shanghai side was green with embarrassment. The drug factory had been right under their noses, and they hadn't noticed a thing. Director Qian rushed off to the provincial department to report overnight. The department chief made an on-the-spot decision. The entire Yushan Town Police Station received a collective third-class merit, and I received a personal first-class merit. At the commendation ceremony, my colleagues looked at me with complicated expressions. One veteran officer said sourly, a newbie like him doesn't know anything, it's just luck. The chief shot back, if you got the skills, go solve a big case. If not, shut up. I thought making first-rank merit would buy me a few days of peace, but the next day the chief called me into his office again. Shaolin, there's a new mission. My eyelids were twitching. I had a feeling he'd send me undercover again. The chief poured me water with a grin. Smart. You're the one who dug up that underground casino lead. If not you, who else? I was speechless. Boss, I've only been on the job 2 days. People gamble millions a night. What am I supposed to play with? The station covers it. If you lose, it's on the house. He grinned slyly. Gotta lose money at the casino, then raid the place and get it back, right? Fine. I'll treat it as a learning experience. That afternoon, a report came in at the station. A girl in Shinla Village got scammed out of her tuition. Team leader Old Lu assigned me to handle it. Everyone else made excuses to bail. Well, I'm a newbie, what could I say? My partner was a female auxiliary cop named Hong Lu, the same tough girl who kicked down the door during the vice raid. When she arrived at Shinla Village, the girl's yard was packed with people, all pointing fingers and blaming her a college student. And you had no caution at all? Where are we supposed to find that much money? Forget studying, just go back to your hometown and get married. The girl crouched in the corner, her eyes empty, the kind of hollow, desolate emptiness that made my heart tighten. I shouted, police business, everyone irrelevant, get out. The crowd dispersed. I crouched in front of the girl. What's your name? Li Yu. Tell me how you got scammed. Her family was dirt poor, her mother bedridden for years. They had borrowed from every relative and friend just to scrape together her first year's tuition. A few days before the semester started, she got a call from someone claiming to be a school teacher, helping her apply for a student loan. They told her to first transfer the tuition to the school's account. She believed it and sent all the money. An old-fashioned scam. But for a poor girl who had just been admitted to college, the identity of school teacher was enough to make her drop all her guard. I asked her father, with all those people just now blaming your daughter, why didn't you say a word in her defense? The man stammered, they're all co-workers. Kindly lend my daughter the money. I didn't say anything else. Hong Lu was taking the statement, speaking very softly. I stood in the yard and called the station to ask them to trace the source of the scam phone number. The person on the phone said there were too many such cases and the money was basically unrecoverable. I said to just try checking. I hung up and turned around. Liu was sitting on the doorstep, staring blankly at the ground. The sun was scorching, but she seemed not to feel it. Don't worry too much for now. I didn't know what else to say. She didn't respond. Suddenly, I remembered a news story I had seen before. A similar case. A female college student was scammed out of all her tuition. On the way back from reporting it, she fainted on a tricycle. She was taken to the hospital but couldn't be saved. The doctor said she had no will to live. I crouched down, looked in her eyes, and said, Liu, regarding the money, the police will do their best to recover it. But you must remember, it's not your fault. The scammer is the bad guy. You are the victim. This is not your fault. Her eyes flickered. She didn't speak. On the way back to the station, Hong Lu drove while indignantly saying, how can those people be like this? Their own daughter was scammed, and they don't feel sorry for her. Instead, they join the outsiders in scolding her. I didn't respond, still thinking about Liu's expression just now. The world is too harsh on victims. You've done nothing wrong, just been too kind, too trusting, and now you're being vilified by everyone. Meanwhile, the real villain is counting money in the shadows, laughing at you, the naive student. Back at the station, old Lu asked how the case went. Telecom fraud, the usual routine. I tossed the materials onto the desk, but that girl's emotional state wasn't right. The two women immediately looked into the distance. But there was no island to be seen anywhere. Only thick sea fog. I was in a good mood at the moment, so I smiled at them. Seeing how confident I was, Susan leaned in and asked, Mr. Pan, how can you be sure there's an island over there? I explained, look at that cloud, it hasn't even moved for a long time. After last night's storm, the daytime temperature is high, and land areas are a bit warmer. Surrounded by sea, this creates a sea breeze blowing toward the island's center. And when the sea breeze meets the land, it rises upward, causing the cloud layer to stay still. Just based on that cloud, I can be sure there's an island. Susan wasn't quite convinced. Not only that below the cloud layer, there's a light green tint. That's because light reflects off the island. Most importantly, look at the skies seagulls have appeared, and the direction they're flying is toward us. That's even more proof there's an island over there. I thought the island would be in the direction the birds are flying from. Susan frowned and asked, seagulls fly from land to the sea in the morning, and only head toward land in the afternoon and evening. It was morning now, I explained. Just then, Yi Wenwen's face lit up with excitement, probably remembering what I had said. Where there are seagulls, there's an island. Uncle, we really did find an island. Yi Wenwen turned to Li Hai, her voice trembling with joy. Her glittering eyes followed the gulls soaring overhead. I said nothing for a moment. I crouched down and scooped up some floating debris from the water. This is floating vegetation. If I had only relied on the earlier evidence, it wouldn't have been enough to confirm there was an island ahead. It could have been due to our physical condition, hallucinations, or a mirage. But this drifting plant material allows me to be 100% certain. There's definitely an island ahead. I stated with absolute certainty. By then, everyone was thrilled. Taking turns rowing the oars covering over 10 kilometers was no easy feat. Our strength was failing too. Now my stomach was growling with hunger. But knowing there was an island ahead, everyone mustered their last ounce of strength. After rowing for 6 kilometers, everyone's hands were blistered from the oars. The sea fog cleared, and a dark, undulating line appeared ahead. It was a ridge, the ridge of an island. An island? An island? There really was an island. Yi Wenwen straightened up excitedly and shouted. As she straightened, her white shirt was stretched taut, her curves enchanting. You have to understand, both women were wearing nothing underneath. Of course, I didn't look at her. Instead, I narrowed my eyes to observe the island. This island was not small, about 3 square kilometers. Besides the main island, there was also a smaller one. A small island like this in international waters certainly wouldn't be shown on ordinary maps. It would only appear on nautical charts. It had no name at all. At that moment, everyone was very excited. Even Susan, who rarely smiled, had a happy smile on her face right then. That smile was truly beautiful. Seeing the island, they, who had lost their strength, mustered up their energy once again. They longed to throw themselves into the embrace of that beautiful island. Resting and moving, it took over 2 hours. Finally, just as their energy was nearly spent, they successfully approached the island. Near the island, there were many coral reefs, glistening with vibrant colors under the sunlight. So beautiful it seemed like paradise on earth. "It's so beautiful. I love you so much, Uncle." Yuan, excited, hugged me and gave me a kiss. Only after the kiss did she realize it was improper, her pretty face blushing amid the cheers of the crowd. Finally, everyone successfully landed on the island. The 2 women stepped barefoot onto the sand. Feeling so comfortable, they simply lay down, enjoying the happiness of their narrow escape. They basked in the sunlight, the sand, and the hope of survival. I dragged the lifeboat onto the sand, then lay down, closed my eyes, and rested. I feel like the air on this island is full of freedom. It's brimming with life. I grabbed a handful of sand and squeezed it tightly, feeling the long-lost texture of solid ground. After drifting at sea for so long, my whole head felt like it was swaying, as if the sky and earth were spinning. I lay on the ground with my eyes closed, my eyelids glowing red through the sunlight. With one hand gripping the sand and the other pressed against my chest, I felt the solid embrace of the earth beneath me. At that moment, I felt my soul finally return to the land. After resting a little, the 2 women went back to the lifeboat. They ate dried fish and drank rainwater, replenishing their protein and strength. I told them to drink the rainwater slowly, or they would vomit. The 2 women were extremely hungry, but with their previous experience, they absolutely dared not wolf down their food. I also sat among them to fill my stomach, because there are many things to do in the afternoon. I must replenish my energy, because we know nothing about this island. We don't know if there are wild beasts on this island. Will there be wolves at night? Or venomous snakes lurking around? So before it gets dark, we had better find a place to take shelter first. Natural shelters like caves. Basically, they're hard to come by. I still plan to find the island stream first. Build a shelter next to the stream. That way, we won't have to worry about fresh water. With water, we can start mini survival plans. After Susan and Yuan had eaten their fill, they picked up some rocks the size of soccer balls and laid out a large SOS on the beach. If a helicopter flies overhead or a ship passes by in the distance, seeing this distress signal, we might be rescued. I pulled out a hemp rope only as long as an arm from the toolbox. I tied it into a knot. "Uncle, what are you doing?" Yuan asked curiously. I pointed to the highest point of the island. "I'm going to climb the tallest tree there, to overlook the whole island, which will help us find a water source. This is a tropical rainforest. Strange trees grow densely. The entire island is pristine forest. To find a stream in this dense forest is very difficult, because streams are hidden under various bushes. But where there are streams, there must be valleys. From a high place, you can see valleys. Besides this method, there's also another way. That is to walk along the edge of the island. But this island is a rocky island. There are many reefs around it. Rocks. To go around this island, it would take more than a day. Besides, I have another plan. That is to see just how big the entire island is. After all, you can't really tell its size from the highest point. Getting a general idea of the island's terrain would be a big help for future survival. Mr. Pan, that's too risky. What if you get bitten by a venomous snake in there? Susan disagreed. Actually, her disagreement was understandable. After all, I'm the only man on this island. In other words, the only source of labor. The 2 women could manage to survive on this deserted island for 10 days or half a month. But if they had to survive for a year or more, that would be a huge problem, because as time goes on, those survival skills might improve. Malnutrition, illness, or injury and infection would also set in. Their chances of survival would grow smaller and smaller. And Susan even suspected she might be pregnant. That makes the lack of a man's care even more critical. I hesitated for a moment. Eyes lowered. The 2 women were still wearing thin clothes. Their figures were faintly visible. Susan's worries were not unfounded, because snakes appear in the afternoon and evening. If I couldn't make it back before sunset, I would likely be bitten to death by a venomous snake. I nodded and abandoned this plan, decided to set out tomorrow morning instead. Then I'll go pick some coconuts. Also, you 2 go find some dry firewood. Don't go too far, and don't go too deep into the forest. It's very cold at night. We must start a fire. Then we can even have some cooked food. When I said that, both women swallowed their saliva. Looking greedy, we indeed haven't had cooked food for a long time. Just thinking of that sizzling roasted meat, they couldn't help but crave it. The two women enthusiastically went to find dry firewood, and I looked for a coconut tree with many coconuts. Climbing a smooth coconut tree with bare hands is extremely difficult, and it's also very dangerous. A man with plenty of physical strength, without any tools to assist him, if he climbs up and down like that, he'll have little strength left, let alone us shipwreck survivors who have been on a diet for so long. Our physical strength is greatly reduced. To climb such a coconut tree, without some skill or experience, it's simply impossible. In no time, you could fall and break your leg, or get your foot pierced by the branches below. Legs, etc. Getting injured on this deserted island is absolutely forbidden. An injury always carries the risk of infection. If the wound reaches an artery or bone, then it is absolutely fatal. I am a mercenary. I once fought in the Iraq War for money. Back then, the money was paid daily. We mercenaries sold our lives this time, so we carried the money in bundles on our bodies. I remember once I hid in a tree and survived by disguising myself for a whole day and night. That tree was tall and smooth. No one ever thought anyone could be up there, because it was impossible for a person to climb. But I could. I slipped both feet into loops of hemp rope, spreading my feet wider than shoulder width apart. The rope loops were pulled tight, like a rubber band stretched between two fingers. Then I gave a strong leap and grabbed onto the coconut tree. Now I look like a giant frog clinging to the coconut tree, my feet pressing against the tree bark. The rope is tightened by my feet, so holds firmly around the trunk. Using this method, as long as the tree's surface isn't greased, I can climb up any tree. At the very top, I can even stand on it, needing only one hand to keep my balance. That way I can free one hand to pick coconuts. Old fishermen living by the sea mostly know how to do this. I climbed up and picked 5 or 6 coconuts, then threw them down. I was thinking that when the two women return, they can drink the delicious coconut water. How happy that would be. We haven't had any other flavors for a long time. Our mouths have become bland and sticky. It's like having a mouthful of thick paste. I jumped down from the tree and took out a utility knife. I peeled 3 coconuts. The shell of a raw coconut isn't that hard. With a knife, I easily poked 2 holes to solve the air pressure problem when drinking. Then directly against one of the holes, I tilted my head back and drank the delicious, sweet coconut water. It instantly revived my whole being. I've never been so happy. After drinking the coconut water, I carefully cut out the meat inside. I'm waiting for the 2 women to come back, so they can drink fresh coconut water and eat the delicious coconut meat. Just then, a scream came from the woods. The sound was made by Yi Wenwen. I sensed something was wrong and immediately ran towards the source of the sound. Soon I saw Yi Wenwen sitting on the sandy grass, her bottom on the ground. Beside her were a few pieces of firewood. The base of her thumb on one hand was bleeding. Her other hand was gripping the upper part of the wound. What happened? I hurried over and asked. Yi Wenwen started crying when she saw me. Her beautiful eyes were brimming with tears. Seeing this made me very anxious. I was bitten by a snake. Did you get a clear look at what the snake looked like? Ich glänzte hier und, because it was bloody and mangled. I couldn't tell what kind of snake had bitten her for the moment, so I urgently asked if it was a venomous snake. She's done for. I didn't get a clear look. It hurts a lot now. Am I going to die? Uncle, I don't want to die yet. Hurry and save me, don't worry. The number of venomous snakes is actually very small. Look, this island isn't very big either. If there were too many venomous snakes, it would affect the island's ecological balance. I comforted her and helped her up. She was so scared her legs gave way, and she couldn't walk at all, so I had to carry her. I walked out. If bitten by a venomous snake in the jungle, you must quickly leave the place where you were bitten. In a law of the jungle, other animals can usually sense if there is a predator nearby. If you don't leave the spot quickly, soon other aggressive creatures will come to fight for the prey. So if we don't get out of here quickly, more venomous snakes will come. I carried her to the beach and made her sit on the ground. She was only wearing a pair of shorts. She sat in front of me. The girl's legs looked exceptionally beautiful. I told her not to move, and I ran to the lifeboat to get a bottle of water. I cleaned her wound with water, seeing 2 neat rows of teeth marks. I breathed a sigh of relief. Uncle, am I going to die? I'm really scared. I don't even have a boyfriend yet. Yi Wenwen said tearfully. I smiled and said, "You won't die." I told her that if it were venomous, there would be a wound, usually like a zombie bite, with 2 fong holes or one, a chevron-shaped bite mark. But the bite marks on her hand were in rows, and very neat. This kind of wound is usually non-venomous. The snake that made it might be relatively larger, looking a bit scary, but is not venomous. But hurts a lot, though. It's all swollen, and there are bruises. Yi Wenwen was still not fully reassured. She was tightly gripping her wrist. Dare not let go. But it's no wonder. She knows nothing about snakes. Anyone bitten by a snake would be this nervous. Once bitten, twice shy. This saying perfectly shows how humans fear snakes so deeply. Venomous snakes' fangs and glands secrete various toxins with different properties, causing a range of poisoning symptoms. These symptoms are quite easy to identify. One type is neurotoxic venom. Another is hemorrhagic venom. After a bite from the former, the wound doesn't hurt or swell, but fatigue sets in, body temperature rises, and breathing becomes rapid. After a bite from the latter, platelets are destroyed, and the wound blood can't clot. Localized swelling, pain, and bleeding occur, followed by difficulty breathing. Death typically comes within 4 hours, leaving only 2 hours for rescue. This wound of yours doesn't show any signs of a snake bite. You can't die from this. Let me explain it to her. After all, Yi Wenwen is an overseas student. If I don't explain it in a more professional way, she'll definitely be worried. Hearing this, she finally relaxed. Her eyes were full of gratitude. Thank you, uncle. Just now, I thought I was going to die. I was so scared that I would never see my parents again. As she spoke, Yi Wenwen started crying again. I helped her bandage the wound. At that moment, Susan also came back carrying some dry firewood. Seeing that Yi Wenwen was injured, she came over and asked with concern. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. Otherwise, the island would have one less person. You too, have some coconut juice and some coconut meat. I ran over and brought back 2 coconuts. I poked a few holes in them directly with a small knife. Then I handed them to the 2 women. So delicious. I never imagined coconut milk could taste this good. And this coconut meat is amazingly tasty too. It's really beyond imagination. Yi Wenwen said excitedly. Susan also had a look of pure bliss. Her smile was as beautiful as a female star in a toothpaste ad. I have to admit, this woman is truly stunning, especially when she's content. When she smiles with happiness, that look is just too beautiful. I remembered what my employer said. No matter what happens, you must protect this woman for me. If something happens to me, make sure you get her to the destination. The people there will give you 10 million as a reward. I always felt there was something special about this woman, that she's more than just that man's mistress. And it also made me suspicious about the attack on the ship. She might be the key clue, but if I ask her now, she definitely won't tell me. After all, it's a matter of life and death for everyone on the ship. It even involves the military. How could it be simple? Are we still sleeping on the lifeboat tonight? After Susan was satisfied, she thought about the problem of sleeping at night. After all, it's not safe for 3 people to sleep together. Men and women should keep their distance. Before, there was no other choice. Now the situation is different. I looked at the sun in the sky, confirmed that there was still time to build a shelter, then looked at the grove, found a spot that wouldn't get wet when the tide came in. I pointed to the area under the coconut tree, saying that spot was flat and dry, and there was a big rock facing the sea. Behind the big rock, we could block the sea wind. We could also use that rock as a wall, so we would need to cut fewer trees to build the wall, saving energy and build a shelter there. The 2 women readily agreed. However, I was a bit troubled now. Right now I only have a knife even smaller than a dagger. Chopping down a small tree isn't too difficult, but if I have to cut down more trees, this knife might get damaged, and my hand wouldn't be able to handle that kind of wear. This knife is incredibly useful to us. We must be careful with it. If primitive humans had a small knife, human history would have been advanced by tens of thousands of years. That shows just how important a small knife can be on a primitive island. Besides, this shelter is only good for maybe 5 or 6 days of sleep. After those 5 or 6 days, we'll have to find a new shelter because there's no fresh water source here. And this shelter isn't sturdy enough. If wild animals show up, the 3 of us would definitely be eaten. So there's no need to waste too much time and energy on it. As long as we can sleep, that's enough. I called for the two women to gather as much firewood as possible, since the fire would need to burn through the night. And I walked into the forest. I hoped to find bamboo, and bamboo mostly grows in valleys, on both sides of streams. Finding bamboo also greatly increases the chances of finding a stream. But it doesn't mean that bamboo is always accompanied by a stream. I'm looking for bamboo because I want to build a shelter with it. It saves more time and effort than building with wood. And bamboo is easy to cut. It can also be used to make many tools, such as fishing spears and fish traps, bamboo ropes, bamboo grills, bamboo spears, etc. These are things that greatly increase our chances of survival. And there are also things I can make when I only have a small knife. The most advantageous tools I can make. If I had a machete, I wouldn't mind cutting down dozens of wrist-thick trees to build shelter. Before entering the jungle, I cut a 2-meter-long branch and held it in my hand. While walking forward, I forcefully whipped the wild path ahead to drive away the venomous snakes sleeping under the grass that hides my feet. I was wearing a set of camouflage gear, which effectively protected against cuts from many natural saw-toothed plants, and also defended against bites from wild mosquitoes and stings from venomous bees. Most fortunately, I had kept my combat boots on, but when the two women fled, they were only wearing slippers, which they lost in the sea, so they had to go barefoot by the shore. Otherwise, I would have assigned them more important tasks. After over 2 hours, I finally found a small bamboo grove. Each of these wild bamboo stalks was as thick as my arm. At most, I could drag or carry 5 or 6 stalks at a time. It was already past 1 in the afternoon. The way back didn't require as many twists and turns as the way here, because I was searching for bamboo on the way here. While on the way back, I just needed to go in a straight line, but it would still take about 40 minutes. I could only make 2 trips at most, since cutting bamboo was very time-consuming. So all things considered, I could only make 1 trip. The remaining time must be used to build a shelter and start a fire. So I have to carry 7 or 8 long bamboo stalks back to meet the basic needs. As for making other things out of bamboo, there's definitely no time for that. I'll have to figure that out tomorrow. I looked around the bamboo grove. There was no stream, which disappointed me a bit. After trekking for so long, I was parched and took a couple of sips of coconut juice from the bottle. After moistening my throat, I began selecting bamboo. Bamboo in this primitive tropical rainforest often hides many green pit vipers. In a cluster of bamboo, there could be 4 or 5 hiding. If I cut the bamboo from below, the green pit vipers above might fall down. They could bite my neck or arm in one strike. A bite to the neck would basically be hopeless. There's an artery and a vein there, allowing venom to quickly return to the heart. Even if it weren't on a deserted island, even in an ordinary forest, bitten in the area around the neck. If not treated within 2 hours, even if rescued, they would end up disabled. I carefully used a branch to drive away the hair-raising bamboo vipers. Several bamboo vipers fell down and quickly slithered toward my feet. Their movement was as fast as lightning. Luckily, I had been prepared. The short branch in my right hand, I slammed it hard onto the ground, and the spot I stood on was solid ground, not a bush. If it were a bush, the branch in my hand would never hit it. It would only hit the top of the bush. In that case, I would just wait to die. This was a spot I had deliberately chosen. If I had no awareness of this, I would already have been bitten. That bad-tempered bamboo viper tried to take revenge for disturbing its nap. But I broke its spine, although it was vicious and venomous. But how could it rival human intelligence? The ground where it crawled was the grave I had prepared for it. After the bamboo viper was killed, I used a branch to flick it aside, then continued clearing this area of bamboo vipers. I knew some bamboo vipers were very patient and wouldn't easily be shaken down, but I wouldn't be easily ambushed either. After hitting with the branch for a while and making sure there were no more bamboo vipers, I went over with a knife. Cut bamboo. The surface of bamboo is very hard. I used the knife to cut a notch around the bamboo, but the cut wasn't deep, so I couldn't break the bamboo directly. And if I forced it, the bamboo would split, wasting all my time. So after cutting a ring with the knife, I made diagonal cuts above and below the ring, cutting inward. The resulting cut looked like a shape lying on its right side. After cutting a V shape like this in a circle, I stood up and grabbed the upper end of the bamboo. With a hard twist, the arm-thick bamboo snapped off. Repeating this process I cut down 8 bamboo stalks, each about 9 meters long. Then I split these bamboo stalks into 3 sections each. Using one of the stalks, I shaved it into bamboo strips. The bamboo strips could serve as rope. I tied up the 2 large piles of bamboo. I was already exhausted. My right hand, from cutting bamboo with a small knife, had developed many bloody blisters. The muscles in my hand ached terribly, but I didn't have much time left. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I couldn't stop for a single moment. If I didn't make it back by dusk, I would most likely be bitten to death by venomous snakes in the forest. Even if I didn't encounter venomous snakes, I would surely run into predators out hunting. I took a long bamboo pole, sharpened at both ends, and threaded it through the middle of the 2 bamboo bundles. Making a carrying pole like this, I could then carry the bamboo on my shoulder and walk back like a farmer. The bamboo load was full of moisture, very heavy. My shoulders strained, aching terribly, but I thought about getting back before dark, so I dared not stop even for a step. I trudged with difficulty along this wild path. A road that usually took 10 minutes to walk took half an hour here. After walking for over an hour, I was drenched in sweat. The coconut water I brought with me was all gone. My physical fitness was still too poor. After finishing the stretch, I felt almost completely drained. It was sheer willpower that got me back to the shore. When I returned, the sun had already descended to just above the horizon. Beautiful fiery clouds over the sea. It was simply too beautiful. I lay down on the beach, gasping for air in big gulps. Only then did my body slowly recover. 2 women walked over, trying to help me carry the bamboo back, but they couldn't lift it at all. The 2 of them probably haven't done any farm work in their entire lives. How could they know how heavy this burden is for a man? Let me take over. I've rested a bit. I placed the carrying pole back on my shoulder and moved step by step toward the big rock. The 2 women hadn't been idle while I was away. They had actually found a large flat stone. Setting that stone above the stone fire pit would allow them to roast meat. They had even piled up a semicircular stone stove pit, but there was no charcoal inside. Beside it were some wooden sticks and fluffy, dry plants. Clearly, while I was gone, they had tried using those tinder materials to start a fire by friction, but failed. I reached out, took Susan's hand, and looked at it. Both hands were covered in bloody blisters, obviously from rubbing the wooden stick with her bare hands to create friction. Such delicate hands couldn't possibly withstand that kind of friction. Susan lowered her head in shame for not being able to help me. Starting a fire by friction isn't done that way. Don't push yourself too hard from now on. If you hurt your hand, it'll be a problem, I said. Susan hummed in acknowledgement. Here am I concerned. She was a little touched. I knew they all wanted to help out. However, survival in the wild isn't as simple as one imagines. Knowing the theory behind survival skills isn't enough. You need rich experience. You 2 helped me find a hemp rope and a green branch. I instructed also to let them lend a hand. Hemp rope was easy to find because there was plenty on the lifeboat. Green branches weren't hard to find either. In a small grove nearby, you could just snap one off. Susan went to find a hemp rope and green branches. I then picked up the small knife and took the bamboo apart. To make the most use of the bamboo, I split 10 bamboo stalks in half. Splitting bamboo was actually pretty easy. Make a cut on it, and then just give it a hard snap. In just a short while, I had snapped off 3 or 4 branches. I laid them flat on the ground, waiting for Susan to return. I had already split 7 of them. Spread flat on the ground, they formed a sort of bamboo raft shape. Mr. Pan, are these branches okay? Susan handed over the branches and asked. I took a look. The branches were about an arm's length long. Thin and moderate, very good. I responded and knelt down to the ground. I used a small knife to trim the branches a bit. Then I carved a circular groove at both ends. I tied a finger-thick hemp rope to both ends of the branch, making a bow. Of course, such a small bow wasn't for hunting. It was for starting a fire by friction. I picked up the fire drill stick that Susan had used earlier. I wrapped the bowstring around it. This way, I just needed to gently hold the top of the drill stick with my hand or something else, then pull the bow back and forth sideways. The drill stick would then spin quickly and continuously. Susan and Ewan saw this and couldn't help but suddenly understand. Uncle, you're truly amazing. Why didn't I think of that? Susan also breathed a sigh of relief at this moment. She had been worried they wouldn't have fire tonight. She still wanted to eat some grilled meat slices. Just use your brain when faced with problems. Bring me that piece of dry wood. and these fine, fluffy, dry weeds. I called out, and Susan and Ewan immediately got moving. Watching the silhouettes of two well-figured women in the dusk light, I actually felt a bit of pleasure. Susan brought over a dry log as thick as a leg. I used a small knife to poke a finger-sized fire drilling hole on it. Since the log was round, it would roll side to side when drilling for fire, making it easy to mess up. So I dug a pit in the ground with my bare hands and buried the log horizontally inside, leaving only a third above ground. Then I piled the dry weeds E11 had brought on top. Then I built a semicircular wall around it with stones to shelter it from the wind. After making full preparations, I sharpened one end of the drill stick into a cone so that it could fit into the fire pit on the dry wood. Then I started pulling the fire bow. The fire bow started smoothly. It wasn't smooth at first, but as I pulled more times, the drill bit and the fire pit became smoother. The motion and speed increased gradually. Soon, smoke began to rise from the drill bit. At this moment, I couldn't afford any mistakes. Otherwise, I would have to start over. So I steadied the speed. Smoke meant the temperature had reached the ignition point. I just needed to keep generating heat through friction until the drill bit and fire pit charred. A few minutes later, a crimson flame appeared. I quickly crouched down and blew on the embers. I lit the dry, kindling grass. When the two women saw the fire, excitedly, she quickly added a lot of small dry twigs for me. The half-circle stone wall we had just built now served well as a windbreak. I picked some larger pieces of wood and stood them up to form a cone-shaped fire. This type of fire is quite particular because we need it to burn all night, and I can't use bow drill every time. So it's essential to preserve the embers. The inside of the cone fire is filled with small dry twigs. The outside is tightly stacked with larger logs. It looks like a wooden cone tent. This way, the air entering inside is limited. The flames will be well controlled. It won't flare up suddenly, nor will it burn through all the wood. Otherwise, we'd have to find dry wood all night to keep the fire alive. Just building a cone fire isn't enough, because this is only for warmth. It's not good for cooking, so I need to build a grid-shaped fire beside it. This way we can keep warm and also cook food. When not in use, the grid-shaped fire can be buried with sand. This way, the spot will stay warm all night. It's like underfloor heating, and lying on top of it to rest is a good option. After all, the bamboo bed shelter I made isn't big enough for 3 people, and the lifeboat can't be slept in either. I've already deflated it to avoid punctures, so this will be my bed for the night. After finishing the fire pit, the two women, imitating what they've seen on TV, skewered the fish fillets onto branches and roasted them over the charcoal. We're already exhausted tonight. Otherwise, I could whip up a proper wilderness meal for them. Right now, I need to speed up getting their shelter done, so everyone can rest and recover their strength as soon as possible. We have to get up early tomorrow. There's a ton of things to do, and there's a suspicion that's been on my mind. It's a suspicion that scares me. I need to climb to the top of the island first thing in the morning to confirm it. I laid the split bamboo on the flat, sandy ground, formed a bamboo bed. At the same time, I tied the remaining bamboo into a raft shape. Using rocks as a wall, I leaned the bamboo wall diagonally, forming a triangle, so one could lie down and rest inside the triangular space. The broken edges of the bamboo wall faced outward to prevent anyone inside from accidentally getting cut by the sharp bamboo edges. At the same time, it also provided good rain protection. Rainwater would flow along the bamboo grooves to the ground. I just needed to dig a drainage ditch on the ground to keep the interior dry. Of course, these bamboo alone were not completely waterproof. I also needed to find some ferns, wild taro leaves or banana leaves. No need to look for them tonight, because it wouldn't rain tonight. Tomorrow and the day after were harder to predict. We couldn't look for a new shelter for the time being. We would definitely be staying here for quite a few days. It was necessary to take precautions. There was still some bamboo left. I made another bamboo wall, covered the triangular entrance of the shelter, leaving only one opening. This way, when sleeping at night, I wouldn't lose body heat to the sea breeze. After arranging these 3 bamboo walls, I fixed them in place with hemp ropes to prevent them from toppling at a touch. And if they were unstable and blown down by the wind, they could easily cause injury. Getting hurt in the wild is no small matter. So any detail that might pose a safety issue, I must take into account. By the time the shelter was finished, it was completely dark. The fire by the seaside flickered like a candle in the wind, yet it still burned with vibrant life. Yi Wen was holding 2 skewers of grilled fish in her hands. Seeing that I'd finished my work, she came over with a big smile and handed me a skewer of fish. "Uncle, this is for you. I didn't grill it very well. Hope you don't mind." I looked at the girl's beautiful and cheerful face. I smiled and glanced at the fish slices she had grilled. This fish naturally had plenty of fat. The fish pieces came out a bit blackened and charred on the outside when grilled, but the oil rendered on the surface gave off an aroma, enough to make this starving man's mouth water. It was grilled pretty well. I brought it to my mouth and took a big bite. The savory taste of the tuna spread in my mouth. With every chew, I enjoyed a crispy texture. Soon, I finished the entire skewer of fish. Deep-sea fish have one advantage over freshwater fish. They have very few bones. No need to worry about getting pricked. Seeing that I had finished, Susan walked over. She shyly handed me a skewer. "Mr. Pan, please try my cooking too. Don't laugh at me." I smiled. I took it and also started eating it in big bites. Both women had good cooking skills. It's just that without saltiness. It lacked a bit of texture. It lacked some texture. But for a starving person, this really wasn't much to complain about. Besides, it was cooked by 2 beautiful women. That alone made it taste especially good. It feels so good to be alive. I can hardly believe that just a while ago we were fighting for our lives at sea. A heavy rain gave us a new hope for survival. Perhaps because this hope was so hard-won. All 3 of us felt particularly grateful. Smiles never left our faces. After we were full, the 2 women headed toward the shelter. I called out to them, "You don't have shoes on. Watch out for the bamboo stubs on the ground. I haven't had time to bury them yet." I warned them. The 2 women acknowledged, then happily walked into the shelter. They lay down inside for a while, then came back out to retrieve the clothes drying on the rocks and spread them over the bamboo bed. I busied myself burying the bamboo ends that stuck out from the extended bed, piling stones on both sides to secure them, to avoid them kicking with bare feet. If they kick something, they won't be able to walk for a week. That would be a huge problem. If they got tetanus, they'd be done for. Now I'm thinking I should weave a pair of straw sandals for them. I really regret not thinking ahead at the time. If only I had taken 2 pairs of shoes from those floating bodies for them. It wouldn't be so difficult now. Without shoes, we absolutely can't go into the mountains. And it's easy to get pierced by debris. So weaving 2 pairs of shoes is the top priority right now. But the materials needed for weaving straw sandals aren't easy to come by, because it requires straw, corn stalks, and sedge grass. But these things can't be found on the island at all. I set my sights on the hemp rope. If I unravel these hemp ropes, maybe I can weave 2 pairs of shoes. The mesh bags used to cover the cans before can come in handy now. The 2 women gather around me, helping to untie the hemp rope net bag. Susan crouched in front of me because she was wearing a white spaghetti strap dress, like a girl playing by the seaside. She was beautiful, and even crouching she looked refined and elegant. Since the dress was somewhat low-cut, as she crouched like that, I could easily see the soft, white scenery of her body. A slight stir of desire rose in my heart. On this deserted island, perhaps these 2 women were my only emotional solace. In the last mission, I was tortured by loneliness to the point of near death. If this time I were alone again, I didn't know if I could hold on. I was weaving straw sandals while thinking of my wife. She was a fisherman's daughter. She was kind and beautiful when I woke up in the arms of a demon. The one I saw was her. She called to me like an angel. At the time I thought I had died, until she rescued me. My 133-day drifting journey had come to an end. You see, during those 133 days, I never once set foot on land. I drifted out at sea the entire time. I had even forgotten what solid ground felt like. So much so that even after lying in a hospital bed for a week, I still couldn't believe I was back on land. When both feet touched the earth, I still felt like I was floating on the sea. The sky above seemed to spin as well. When she came to visit me again, I said I wanted to marry her. I knew I was being a little hasty, but I truly didn't want to miss such an angel. Yet, unfortunately, she fell seriously ill. I borrowed a large sum of money to cure her disease. After that, her legs could no longer walk. I knew I had to earn enough money to support her for the rest of her life. So I went out to sea, but right now, I miss her terribly. My wife, are you doing well far away? I'm still alive. Wait for me. I will definitely come back. I will definitely fulfill my promise. to protect you for a lifetime. Thinking of this, I held back my tears, not letting them fall, so as not to ruin my image as a tough, unwavering man. Weaving straw sandals was something my clever wife taught me. With every movement I made, I remembered one of her smiles. The scenes felt like just yesterday. By 9 in the evening, 2 pairs of rope sandals were finished. The 2 women put them on their feet, and they actually looked somewhat stylish. Or perhaps it was because their feet were just too beautiful. She walked a few circles on the beach in the sandals, then came back happily. "Thank you, Mr. Pan. I wouldn't know what to do without shoes," Susan said gratefully. Yi Wenwen danced gracefully before me. A happy girl loves to dance. She has a slender figure, and her dancing was truly beautiful, like a fairy who had fallen to the mortal world. "Rest early, there's still a lot to do tomorrow," I said to the 2 women. They were tired too, so they responded and walked into the shelter. There was still a bit of space inside for me to lie down, but I didn't go in. I filled the fire pit with sand and stones, then laid down 6 split bamboo pieces flat. Then I lay down on top. It felt very warm. "Mr. Pan, aren't you coming in to sleep?" Susan saw that I hadn't gone in and asked curiously. Yi Wenwen also looked over. "I need to watch the fire. You 2 sleep first." I refused them. The 2 women looked at each other. In the end, they agreed and lay down asleep. I don't know what they were thinking, or maybe they were thinking about the shelter I worked so hard to build, and I didn't even sleep in it myself. They might have felt a bit embarrassed. Now it's not like the time at sea, when there was no place to sleep. So naturally, it's not appropriate to sleep together anymore. Hungry and thirsty at sea, had no thoughts at all. But now I can eat my fill and have a warm little nest, sleeping between 2 women. Naturally, it couldn't be too peaceful. Perhaps the 2 of them also thought of this. So they didn't mention it again. They just felt a little guilty. After all, I used my labor to get them a dry and warm environment, while I lay outside enduring the cold wind. Of course, I didn't mind sleeping there. After I regained my strength, my body was quickly absorbing nutrients. In a few days, I would recover my former strength. Then the chances of leading everyone to survive would be greater. Thinking about it, I gradually fell asleep. When I woke up, I felt someone lying in my arms. I thought it was Susan, but to my surprise, it was that girl Yi Wenwen. She was sleeping like a baby, by this warm, glowing fire. She looked so peaceful. Her arms were crossed over her chest, and her body was slightly curled like a young bird nestled in its nest, evoking tenderness and a strong desire to protect her. Yi Wenwen had a rather girlish, cute face. Though she just turned 18, her cheeks were still slightly plump, with a bit of adorable baby fat. During these days adrift at sea, her skin was no longer as milky white as before, but she still retained her youthful charm. Her full, well-defined lips, no longer chapped now, looked soft and tender. I wondered how she ended up lying in my arms. Had she woken from a nightmare during the night? I noticed tear stains at the corners of her eyes. Was she missing her deceased uncle, or feeling homesick? Before, while drifting at sea, life and death unknown, survival instinct overrides everything. So there was no spare emotion for longing or tears. But now that her feet are on solid ground, her emotions slowly start to well up. She was sleeping on top of her thick clothes. I slowly sat up, only to find my hands wrapped in quite a bit of adhesive tape. Cutting bamboo with a small knife and rowing before had left my palms and fingertips covered in blood blisters. I had never bothered to tend to them. I didn't expect this girl to be so considerate, even treating these wounds for me. Her own snakebite must still be hurting, yet she still cared about me. A warmth spread through my heart involuntarily. If I had a daughter like her, I would probably be very happy. I'm almost 40 now. As a mercenary, I'm too old, but as a father, I'm just the right age. But I have no connection to the role of father. If I hadn't been kidnapped by human traffickers when I was 6, perhaps my fate wouldn't have been so harsh. At the age of 9, I killed a man who bought me and raised me. It was after many failed attempts to escape, a decision made in desperation. From the age of 7, I kept trying to run away. I escaped 7 or 8 times, and each time I was caught, I was beaten viciously. I couldn't get out of bed for half a month afterward. If I hadn't been so tough, I would probably have died back then. After killing my foster father, I fled to a border town to beg. I was captured by the minions of a Golden Triangle drug lord and forced to become a child soldier. I was supposed to end up like the other expendable child soldiers, dead by the enemy's guns soon enough. But a powerful survival instinct, along with the favor of Lady Luck, kept me alive through one mission after another. The drug lord saw my potential and sent me to an organization that trained killing machines. I trained there for nearly 5 years. After that, I returned to the drug lord's side. I started working for him when I was only 15. Women, money, drugs, bloodshed, severed heads, these filled my entire childhood and youth. I felt so unfortunate. I longed for the outside world, as peaceful as heaven. I wanted to return to the embrace of my homeland, to become an ordinary citizen there. But even though it was such a simple wish, it was also so difficult. When I was 25, I had a girlfriend in a village. Her name was Ali. Everyone in the village knew my status. Ali's father was also well aware. He married Ali to me, hoping that I could protect her. Unlike other women, who met an extremely tragic fate, but Ali was naturally beautiful. Once while she was bathing, she caught the eye of my boss. She was dragged into the bushes by his men. After that, Ali killed herself. The look in her eyes when she died was still staring. I don't know what she was staring at. When I saw her body, it was already stiff on the tree. I held her and cried for a long time. It was she who made me rise up, using my bullets to shatter the enemy's heads, using a sharp dagger to cut off the drug lord's head. That year, I was only focused on escaping. They consumed enormous resources to teach me how to survive, how to kill, and now I use these skills against them. I survived and became the most wanted man by the underground forces in the Golden Triangle. Nicknamed the Ghost King, a few years later, I stole someone's identity and infiltrated a mercenary company in the US. Then I joined the Iraq War. 8 long years of war. I don't know how many times I walked back and forth between death and Lady Luck. In the end, I still survived. After the Iraq War ended, I started working as a bodyguard. Even now, thinking back on the bloody life I've lived, this moment of peace feels like heaven. I've already forgotten what it's like to cry. I only remember trembling, heartbeats, the sound of my comrades falling, and the countless pairs of eyes that never closed in time. If I had a normal life, I would already have a family now, a child. But as I am now, all I want is to survive, to return to my wife's side, to return to my homeland. I wish there were no darkness in this world. No slaughter. Unknowingly, my muddy tears actually began to flow. Even one, whom I held in my arms, had woken up sometime without me noticing. Gently, she wiped away the tears sliding from the corner of my eye. She lifted her delicate lips and lightly kissed my eye. Under the hazy night, the girl's face was youthful and delicate. Her big, gem-like eyes, she blinked, and a warm smile suddenly spread across her face. Just as I was about to speak, her warm little hand slipped into my camouflage pants. That little hand was warm and cozy, like a little hamster that had burrowed into my pocket. "Girl, what are you doing?" I quickly pulled out her fair little hand, asked her somewhat angrily. "Uncle, I'm 18 years old." The girl's voice was still childish. It was very pleasant to hear. During my time in the Golden Triangle, girls with such beautiful voices, most of them didn't live past 18. They would become goods sold to various places, serving as playthings for men. If lucky, they might live to 18. But usually, before reaching 18, they were already plagued with various diseases. The still healthy organs on their bodies would be sold. I don't know in which underground black market they would end up in an operating room. And then that heart would go on beating in some rich old man's body for the rest of his life. I once saw with my own eyes an old man over 90 who had received a brand new young girl's heart, with the girl's bloodied corpse lying beside him, a bloody hole in her chest, still faintly visible through the gradually ceasing active organs. Ironically, I was standing fully armed and numb at the entrance of the operating room, serving as this old man's bodyguard. The suppressed pain of these years had been churning in my chest. It wasn't until Alex's death that had awakened my long-numbed conscience. As I was recalling those memories, the young girl suddenly darted to my abdomen area. Nervous, I reached out and shoved Yi-Wenwen away. A Yi-Wenwen's injured hand hit a rock. She cried out in pain. "Ich glänzte her." Her eyes were full of confusion and resentment. "Are you hurt?" I suddenly felt a pang of sympathy and walked over to help her up. "Je vengeant potet." Clearly she was angry. "Sorry, I'm not targeting you. You reminded me of some unpleasant things. Go back and rest," I said sternly, looking into the girl's naive eyes. "Uncle, we survived thanks to you. and I have nothing to repay you. Why won't you accept it? Yu Wenwen asked very directly. I took a deep breath, reached out, and pinched her cheek. We survived together. We still have to leave this island alive together. As for repayment, wait until we leave this damn place. Rest while there are still many things to do after dawn. I said in an adult tone. I knew she felt very insecure at that moment, and she didn't know me well, other than using this method to gain a sense of security. There's no other choice. Yu Wenwen didn't say anything else. She scurried back to sleep, clearly still a bit angry. I pulled up my zipper, lay back down on the bamboo bed, and rested my hands behind my head, gazing at the starry sky. What Yu Wenwen had just done reminded me of several Iraqi girls killed by fellow mercenaries. After we mercenaries stepped onto that land, we had no nationality. Our actions wouldn't be recognized by any country. If trouble came, we'd either be killed as terrorists, or we'd go on the run. There was no third option. Mercenaries working there were either short-term or long-term. Short-term was 3 to 5 months. Long-term over a year. Someone like me, who survived 11 years of combat, was extremely rare. And those soldiers, having been away from women for so long, often brutalized local girls. By the time I found out, 3 Iraqi girls had already been killed by mercenaries trying to cover their tracks. I was utterly enraged at that time. I shot them dead on the spot. Mercenaries are strictly prohibited from killing each other. Luckily, it wasn't discovered, because that area was being bombed at the time. Otherwise, I would have had to go to great lengths to cover it up, to avoid revealing my identity as the Ghost King. Now, recalling those terrified young girls, kneeling on the ground, satisfying those beasts, I can't find peace within. So just now, Yu Wenwen's actions tore open my emotional wounds. Tomorrow, let's first go to the top of the island and take a look. I tried hard to push aside those unbearable memories, thinking about which route to take up the mountain tomorrow, to confirm the safety of this island. The morning sea breeze was especially cool. The pitch black sea gradually changed from dark green to deep blue, like a huge piece of cloth dyed with color-changing material. The pale dawn rising above the horizon gradually burned into a golden yellow. The vast sky was adorned with wispy clouds like a painting. I got up and stretched my sweat-soaked body. Yesterday's fatigue was completely gone, but my body had been heavily drained over the past half month. During the fasting period, my already scarce body fat had severely dropped, making my muscle lines particularly prominent. Each striated muscle exuded a sense of resilience and strength. I raised my hand, spreading and clenching my fingers. The muscles at the base of my thumb still ached faintly. This was a muscle bruise from long hours of whittling bamboo with a knife. Subcutaneous bleeding and soft tissue damage. But these were superficial wounds without external trauma. Not too severe. They would heal quickly as long as I reduced labor. The thick calluses on my palms also provided good protection. I repeatedly flexed the fingers of both hands, trying to adapt to the pain, to prevent a critical failure of muscle response in a crucial moment. The 2 women had not woken up yet. The fatigue and hunger of the past few days had been tormenting them. Their bodies had never received proper rest. I wasn't in a hurry to go up the mountain either. At this hour, the wild beasts and poisonous creatures in the forest hadn't returned to their nests yet. I wasn't keen on provoking their bloodthirsty fangs and venom either. Judging by the situation, we could only head up the mountain around 9 in the morning. Right now, the most important thing was to replenish energy before the climb. I moved the stone slab for roasting that the 2 women had found. I stacked up stones to form a U-shaped stove. I placed a coconut shell, whose top I had cut off, on top of the stove. I poured some fresh water into it. Then I dropped in fish slices with a strong, fishy smell. Having roasted fish slices for breakfast would taste awful. Drinking fish slice soup would be slightly better. But we didn't have any edible salt. The fish soup we did cook would be bland. However, it would be rich in nutrients. It would barely do for now. To enjoy good food, you must first find a stable shelter. Only then can you consider a stable freshwater source. In wilderness survival, shelter is the most important thing. Because in a 24-hour day, at least 6 hours are spent sleeping. 6 hours of unconsciousness. Without a good living environment, it's like dropping a bloody piece of meat into a hungry tropical jungle. The danger is easy to imagine. Even on the beach, it's the same. The beach on this deserted island is nothing like the sand in a tourist area. Soon the fish soup was ready. This small coconut obviously couldn't make enough for 3 servings. So I made 3 batches and placed them in the sand pit I had dug earlier. The damp, cool sand pit quickly absorbed the heat. The lukewarm coconut fish soup was ready to drink. I didn't wake up the 2 women. Their stamina and constitution are much worse than mine. If they don't get enough sleep, it can easily lead to illness. Now, I must ensure the 2 women recover their health as soon as possible. Otherwise, their immunity will be too weak, and if they get sick frequently, they will eventually die on this deserted island. After I finished a bowl of fish soup, I also scooped out and ate the coconut meat inside. My appetite is large, so this little breakfast naturally cannot satisfy me. But having 1 meal is perfectly fine for now. I strapped that black sailor knife to my arm. This sailor knife originally had a black leather sheath, making it very convenient to tie on the arm, and not easy to lose. This sailor knife is extremely important to us. It is truly indispensable. Before finding a new replacement, it must never be damaged. Fortunately, this sailor knife is a high-quality survival knife made in Germany. The quality is top-notch. If it were an ordinary knife or dagger, it wouldn't last long before breaking. Then we'd be back to the Stone Age. We'd have to chop down trees with blunt stones. Felling trees with blunt stones isn't as simple as it sounds. Before the tree falls, your hands might already be wrecked. Mr. Pan, you're up. Susan, who had just woken up, came out of the bamboo hut and greeted me. Ich glänzte her. She looked good, wearing a white dress. Nothing underneath the sea breeze made it cling tightly to her body. Slim figure, but with curves that were full of allure. She smiled at me and brushed her long hair away from her forehead. The beautiful sea and blue sky served as the canvas. At that moment, she was the lovely seaside girl in the painting. Too bad I don't know how to paint. Otherwise, I could definitely capture her radiance right now. Yeah, here's some fish soup. Just enough to tide you over for now. I'm heading up the mountain. Before I come back, don't wander around. And don't go picking things up by the seaside. This area is a shallow coral sea. There might be stranded jellyfish in the seaweed washed ashore. Getting stung by them can be deadly. I'm really worried about them. If those 2 women wait here too long, they might naively go picking up shells or something. When I come back, they'll have turned into 2 ugly corpses. Upon hearing this, Susan nodded seriously. She lifted her skirt and walked over to the fish soup I had cooked for them. She took a satisfied sniff. Her stomach was already growling. Mr. Pan, have you eaten? Susan picked it up and asked. She is a very polite woman. On the ship, she demonstrated in every way the qualities expected of an upper-class woman. But I don't understand why she, so young, would be with a man nearly 60 years old. However, it's not convenient for me to ask about these matters. Now is not the time for idle talk. I nodded to tell her I had already eaten. She then began to eat. I picked up a thick bamboo about 3 fingers wide and sharpened one end. I repeated this process and made 3 in total. 2 short ones and 1 long one. I tucked the 2 short ones into my waist. This was to prevent the long spear from being unable to stop a beast's attack. They were short spears for disemboweling in close combat. Although there are fewer beasts during the day, it doesn't mean there are none. Those beasts that didn't catch food at night will find a shady spot to ambush, waiting to strike foolish creatures. I gave a brief explanation, then got up and headed into the mountains, walking into the jungle. The sound of birds was incessant. The natural, melodious bird song was truly intoxicating, but I had no heart to appreciate it. The overnight sea fog had made the forest very humid, although it wasn't raining. Dew hung on the tips of the lush leaves in the forest. There were absolutely no paths in the jungle. It was as primitive as arriving on a strange planet. I had to rely on the thick trees and walk in one direction. Large trees absorb a lot of water and nutrients as they grow. Plus, their canopies are large, which severely affects photosynthesis and nutrient absorption for plants beneath them. So under normal circumstances, the path under big trees has high visibility and is easier to traverse. Unlike those low shrubs, you can walk a few steps before getting stuck. Various plant thorns can take turns torturing you. Even my thick, tough camouflage uniform couldn't withstand much of that torment. Not to mention the treacherous creatures that like to hide in the bushes. If they bite you once, I'd probably end up losing my life here. But walking under the big trees. Also be careful of poisonous snakes camouflaged in fallen leaves. For example, The extremely venomous five-step snake particularly likes to hide in piles of fallen leaves, making it hard to guard against. One careless step and you could get bitten. Besides snakes, there are also poison dart frogs that prefer damp tree roots. These little creatures are no bigger than a thumb. If you accidentally get touched by the venom from the glands on its back, then you can only wait to die, let alone without medical care. Even with it, the mortality rate is extremely high. So before going up the mountain, I put on the gloves from the toolbox to avoid accidentally touching these little creatures. I walked along the ridge for over an hour, covering less than a mile, and the path was extremely difficult. I estimated that it would take another hour or two to reach the summit. I still didn't know how big this island was. From when I landed, it was probably only about 3 to 4 square kilometers. Stumbling along with uneven steps, I walked for a while. I looked up at the dappled shade. Deep inside the jungle, it's hard to catch a glimpse of the mountaintop because the dense forest completely blocks the view. That's why I chose a predetermined route before climbing. If I wandered aimlessly, I likely wouldn't find the summit even by dark. I pushed on for another hour and climbed over a huge boulder. The view suddenly opened up. I shielded my eyes from the sudden glare of sunlight, letting them adjust. To my astonishment, I discovered a big surprise. Beneath this slope was actually a lake within the island. This island lake wasn't completely enclosed. It had an outlet, which flowed eastward along the valley. I could easily pinpoint where it emptied into the sea. I was so thrilled I couldn't contain myself. Drenched in sweat, I stood there. Looking at this calm, mirror-like lake, I really wanted to plunge in and take a bath. To swim freely the island lake in the tropical jungle nurtured the entire island's ecosystem. I even saw egrets skimming across the lake's surface, fish frolicking at the bottom of the lake, and a small otter drinking water by the shore. So beautiful nature finally showed a hint of mercy to me, who had returned from the brink of death 3 times. I checked the time. There was still time, so I quickened my pace and climbed to the mountaintop. The trees around the mountaintop were not as tall as those on the hillside, and there were fewer low-growing plants. This was probably because the mountaintop was a rocky peak. A few hardy trees had grown tall. Naturally, there was no room left for smaller plants. I climbed into the canopy of a fig tree. A few monkeys were startled and fled. Standing on the tree canopy, I surveyed the entire island, except for the secondary island a few kilometers away, which was too hazy to see clearly. The main island's topography was laid out before my eyes. If seen from a distance, this island resembled a Jurassic seismosaurus lying asleep on the sea. It was incredibly grand and magnificent. I gazed at a rocky hill on the secondary island. I faintly noticed a straight pole standing upright in a crevice. It looked like a flagpole. I frowned slightly. I shielded my eyes with my hand above my brow and stared carefully for a long time. I worried it was a man-made flagpole, because it's rare for such a straight plant to grow from a rock crevice. Most would be crooked trees. If it was man-made, who would be in a place like this? Unless it's pirates, I had been guessing all along. Whether this island might be a pirate island. If that were the case, the SOS signal we laid out on the beach wouldn't just fail to call for help, but would also attract pirates to hunt us down. My heartbeat involuntarily quickened. I grabbed my bamboo spear and hurried back. The speed of returning along the same path was more than 4 or 5 times faster than when climbing up. All the way downhill, encountering rocks, tree roots, weeds, and the like, I leaped over them directly. The speed was fast and the noise was loud. Even if there were sleeping venomous snakes nearby, they would be startled and flee. Moreover, when I was climbing up, I had been probing the path with my bamboo spear constantly. The possibility of accidents was greatly reduced. While sprinting wildly, I was thinking, if this island is a pirate island, then every once in a while, the pirates would come back here once, because they must have buried treasure here. They make the sea their home, so it's impossible for them to store their wealth on the ship. And it's also unlikely to be stored on land, because the governments of various countries crack down quite heavily on pirates. In international waters, they are fine, but once they go ashore, the situation is very different. Capturing them can confiscate a lot of wealth. The government will naturally be much more proactive. That way, they want to be able to deposit their money in banks. And the islands are where they hide their treasures. In the past, pirates mostly robbed cargo ships carrying gold and jewelry. Now, gold and such things are generally shipped by air. What is transported by sea nowadays is mostly export goods. They're useless to them. So now they mainly seize cargo and kidnap people for ransom. And they won't accept ordinary currency either. Only gold, diamonds, US dollars, and drugs. The gold and diamonds they obtain are stored in well-sealed boxes and buried underground on some island. And usually only a few high-ranking pirates know the route to such treasure islands. If they find people on the island, they'll naturally worry about the route being exposed. They will definitely capture us like prey, then cruelly toy with them to death. Finally, throw the bodies into the sea to feed the fish, becoming fertilizer for the ocean. So now, I must be sure whether this is really a pirate island or not. No one knows on which rainy night the pirates will climb onto the island by feeling the slippery rocks. While we are fast asleep, slit my vulnerable throat with a cold dagger, then capture the two women, tear off all their clothes. Let dozens or hundreds of pirates of different colors take turns humiliating them. Then chop them up to feed the dogs. I've seen such things often. In my days struggling in the Golden Triangle, I witnessed with my own eyes those thugs cut off a woman's breast and place it on a plate to feed his wolf dog. A wolf dog raised on human flesh is incomparably ferocious. A tiger cannot assert any dominance in front of several such wolf dogs. It is utterly irrational to judge these pirates by human nature, but their arrival might be our only hope of leaving this island. Crisis and opportunity go hand in hand. As far as I know, pirates are usually fugitives from neighboring countries. La criminals, homeless, bloodthirsty as beasts. Every one of them is a desperado. They are definitely not easy to deal with. And with two women by my side, there's no way I could sneak onto their ship because they have a very strict division of labor. 3 extra people would definitely be noticed, unless I kill all these armed to the teeth pirates and seize the pirate ship that's their lifeline. That's clearly unimaginable. One mistake, and I'd be doomed forever, unless absolutely necessary. I'd rather spend my life on this primitive tropical desert island than gamble on that slim chance of survival with them. Because I was running at top speed, I neglected my surroundings. Suddenly, I heard the sound of trees snapping behind me. I snapped my head back for a glance, and a female leopard, about 50 or 60 kilograms, was actually stalking right behind me. How could such a predator exist on this small island? Strange, its thick paw pads allowed it to track its prey in absolute silence. If it hadn't suddenly accelerated to pounce, snapping a dry branch, I would never have noticed its presence. By the time I realized, I might already have become its meal. That glance back immediately put it on alert. Its eyes widened and its long brows shot up, muscles in its hind legs instantly bulging. Its forelegs flattened, the telltale sign of an impending strike. Every hair on my body stood on end. There was no way a 2-legged human could outrun a 4-legged leopard. And as a feline, it had virtually no rival in the jungle. Either it saw the sharp spear in my hand, or it had never encountered a human before. Dare not charge recklessly. Years of killing have given me a crisis responsibility beyond ordinary imagination. I half-crouched, my eyes locked tightly onto its leopard pupils. The long spear in my hand pointed directly at it. The butt of the spear pressed against the ground, forming a 30-degree angle with the ground. As long as it dared to pounce, the long spear in my hand could adjust its angle in an instant, using its own momentum to pierce through its abdomen. At the same time, my right hand drew the sharp sailor's knife, armed with a set of fangs, and a gaze that dared to meet its eyes directly, which made this jungle overlord unable to gauge my fighting strength. The leopard's nose kept emitting provocative, heavy breaths, but it still did not dare to pounce. I slowly retreated. I couldn't keep stalemating with it forever. Its stamina could maintain this standoff for 4 to 5 days, but I would collapse in a single day. There were only 2 paths before me. The first is to make it regret it a bit, then let it leave on its own. The second is to risk my life fighting it. Although this leopard isn't very large, given my current stamina and reflexes, I can hardly win without injury. Its grayish-white claws are as sharp as hooked daggers. One scratch from it means death or serious injury. I've seen what a wild beast's claws can do to a belly. Those white intestines spilled out, soaked in blood all over the ground. Its claws are already that terrifying, let alone its fangs with astonishing bite force. If a fragile human limb gets caught in that bite, it can be torn off in an instant. The floor of the primeval jungle is covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves. Stepping on it feels like walking on snow. It sinks slippery and soft underfoot, and the smell of decaying leaves fills the air. I have to back away carefully, steady my center of gravity to avoid accidentally slipping. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a chance to react. The agile and alert leopard would pounce in an instant, pressing its powerful front paws onto my chest and biting off my throat in one go. Life and death are always just a matter of an instant. Awareness of danger must come before the danger itself. I'm stepping back, the leopard is advancing. Its eyes are fixed on the spear in my hand. Clearly, it fears the spear I'm holding. It moves cautiously, while shifting left and right, trying, when I'm not paying attention, to avoid the spear and pounce right at me. With its biting force, if it comes from a side, it could bite off my arm in one bite. It steps very cautiously and carefully, even with deceptive body movements, to trick prey. For example, its front leg moves left. Its head turns right. If one were an experienced hunter, they could see through it at a glance. It wants a side jump and then, like lightning, turn around and bite at my flank. By watching the direction of its limbs and tail, I can identify its true pounce direction, because both pouncing and turning jumps require force. The changes in its limbs will follow its true intention. It cannot deceive, but its head turns to the right, while baring its teeth and claws. This strongly suggests it is trying to deceive and confuse its prey. The leopard is a natural master of hunting and ambush. It is a true hunter of the tropical jungle. Its hunting skills are outstanding. It absolutely cannot be underestimated. If you fail to understand every detail of its movements, it often becomes the root cause of death. I must now find a favorable geographic position so that I can take the initiative to provoke it and then make it lose its control and caution, actively pouncing at me. The leopard has a volatile temper, but it is extremely patient. Once it locks onto prey, it can chase for tens of kilometers without giving up. It is not like the cheetahs of deserts or grasslands. In the case of a cheetah, if it fails to catch its prey twice, it will basically give up. It's not that they don't want to chase, but because a cheetah's pursuit speed reaches 90 to 120 kilometers per hour, this speed can be maintained for at most 3 minutes. If it exceeds that, the cheetah's physiological structure forces it to slow down. Otherwise, they would die from overheating. But leopards are different. Although leopards don't have the terrifying speed of cheetahs, their endurance is enough to exhaust any prey to death. Generally speaking, leopards hunt at night. This leopard in front of me was probably woken up by my rapid running. I have to shake it off. Otherwise, I'll end up losing my life here today. After a few minutes of confrontation, this guy tried to rush at me several times, but was scared off by my bamboo spear suddenly thrust forward. Actually, I could tell. It was simply testing my reactions. If it had truly pounced, it wouldn't have had the strength to retreat, and I would have definitely pierced its body with the bamboo spear. I estimated this leopard weighed about 120 gene, roughly 132 pounds. A leopard this massive would have a hunting territory of at least 17 square kilometers. But this island is only 4 to 5 square kilometers. This made me wonder how this leopard managed to grow so large. But then I thought, this island has a lake in its center, and such a primeval jungle. If there were only 2 or 3 leopards, they could indeed survive. After all, besides food in the jungle, there are fish in the sea and the lake. This leopard is female. There should be a male on the island as well, or a few males. On such a small island, having 2 or 3 leopards is simply too dangerous, because it would be far too easy for them to find the 3 of us. They only need to use their keen sense of smell to do so, tracking and locating us. Thinking about how the 3 of us weren't eaten by them last night is truly a stroke of luck within misfortune. While thinking of a countermeasure, I have already retreated next to a rock, and behind the rock is a rocky slope. This rocky slope isn't very steep, like natural stone steps. Below it grow scattered conifer leaves. I decide to jump down, stand below, letting the leopard be above. This way, its downward line of sight will have a small blind spot. Moreover, when it pounces down, its body will be pitched about 30 degrees more than usual. This leaves me a huge window of space and time to stab with the gun. This is the only breakthrough that works in my favor. Whether I can make it back to the shelter alive depends entirely on the next series of moves. I need to keep it from seeing my spear. At the same time, I need to provoke it, so it'll charge at me actively. I glance back at the 1.5-meter high rocky cliff behind me. Without a second thought, I jump straight down. As soon as I jumped down, the leopard's head immediately popped out. It looked down at me. I seized the chance and jabbed my spear fiercely into its chin. The pain made this fierce creature let out a deafening roar. Clearly, it was enraged, and that's exactly what I wanted to piss it off. If it stayed calm, I wouldn't be able to stay calm myself. This time, I took another big step back. I found a favorable foothold. The leopard moved to the other side of the rock and poked its head out. It jumped straight down. Since it was on the other side, I naturally couldn't stab it with this leap. Bamboo spears are not very sturdy. Only by aligning perpendicularly with the inertia of the enemy's charge can it pierce through. If you use it like a bayonet to stab, the bamboo spear will surely break. And at best, you'd only wound it, unable to inflict a fatal injury. You have to understand, stabbing sideways like this will hit its ribs.